Hello everyone, this is part 7 of What If Naruto Had a Secret, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. The Uchiha clan. The largest, most powerful clan in Konoha. They possess the feared bloodline limit, the Sharingan, which while unable to compete with the Byakugan in reading ability, could copy any move and offer a sort of telepathy. They had even formed and still made up the bulk of the Konoha military police force. To be Uchiha was to be second to no one. Yet Uchiha Sasuke had failed in this regard. It was one thing to be outshone by the likes of Itachi, who was so insanely brilliant and powerful that not even their father could control the ninja. It was an entirely another thing to be outshone by Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto, the last loser from the academy. For several years, Sasuke had been first and had taken a mild delight in rubbing it in the boy's face. Yet not too long ago, having allowed his pride and desire to show off for a pink-haired teammate get the better of him, Sasuke had fought with Naruto, and though the advantage had been his for most of the fight, Naruto had actually won. Somehow, that blonde moron had found a way to get inside Sasuke defenses and strike him. Therefore, no matter how well he did on his mission to Wave Country, no matter how much Sakura assured him that he was great and strong, Sasuke could feel his chin burning from the weak blow. He had tried to analyze every moment of that fight and could see nothing. All he knew was that Naruto had moved without any body movement. As impossible as that sounded, it was true, and Uchiha Sasuke was tormented by that fact. What good were his eyes if he couldn't see his enemy? That was the single question repeating in his mind, making him the single most depressing person ever. Even now, finished with training for the morning, Sasuke was brooding. He couldn't help it. He wanted to know what style Naruto had used and how it could even exist. Fair. I still say those Yakuza weren't much. Kiba suddenly said from his stretched out position in the field, his white dog resting comfortably on his sea. I beat up like 5 or 6 without even breaking a sweat. I don't see why we have to keep training. Sasuke snorted, closing his eyes. Was there any point in bragging about that when you were not even among the top of the Genin group? Aha, but those demon brothers were insane. Sakura suddenly added, her tone fanciful. Sasuke-kun handled them perfectly. Sasuke opened his eyes to stare at her. If you have time to compliment me, you should work on your genjutsu. He saw the surprise on her face and allowed a brief smile to show. She blushed faintly, and he could tell she would continue practicing well after they were gone. She had said it several times to him, that she would do anything to make him happy. After the first few times he had told her that he could never like a weakling like her, and she had started putting a great deal of effort into her training. His thoughts, however, were derailed as a loud and disturbingly familiar voice drifted up from the forest. Ah, but do we really have to practice taijutsu? We just did that this morning. Sasuke was on his feet in a heartbeat, his every muscle taut. What was that loser doing out here? Seconds later, a battered-looking Naruto, who was missing his jacket, and his sensei came striding into view. The woman looked as if she was near a breaking point, and Naruto looked as if he was ready to start begging. Oi, it's Naruto, Kiba said, sitting up, which displaced Akamaru. I can't wait to rub his nose in our completed mission. Quote. You are a real idiot, aren't you? Sasuke muttered, watching as Kiba climbed to his feet and started waving and shouting. It was obvious that Naruto had just gotten back from a mission, possibly a C-ranked mission as well. Sasuke would have felt no surprise at that. After all, according to Shikamaru, the blonde had been gone for almost the same length of time as they had. Oi, Naruto! Kiba shouted, cupping his hands around his mouth. Naruto turned and spotted the gray-jacketed boy, waving back enthusiastically. Kiba took a deep breath and then continued his shouting. We completed a C-rank mission. We kicked her and took names. Sasuke saw the annoyance on Anko's face as Naruto grinned while cupping his own hands. Bah, that's nothing, I just completed a B-rank mission to Grass Country. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, staring at the blonde in mute anger, aware that Kiba and Sakura were both shocked into silence. They would of course assume he was lying, but Sasuke knew better. He wasn't sure why, or how, but Sasuke knew that Naruto had indeed outperformed him. Again. Geez, he just never stops lying. Kiba grumbled finally, watching as Anko grabbed the back of his shirt and yanked him off his feet as they continued on their way to the gates. Sakura nodded in agreement, frowning ever so slightly. Yay, as if that Naruto could really do a B-ranked mission. He wasn't lying, Sasuke said, his tone expressionless. Turning his gaze on Sakura and a surprised Kiba, he continued. His jacket was missing and both of their packs were nearly empty. Okay, so he had a mission, Kiba said dismissively as he laid back on the ground near a disgruntled Akamaru. Still wasn't a B-ranked one. If Sasuke-kun said he did, then he did. Sakura suddenly said defensively, glaring at the boy, and Sasuke turned away. Balling his fists tightly, he heard his knuckles pop, then not saying another word he moved away from the two arguing genin to begin training once more. He would not be second to that loser. For the last time, Naruto, we are going to practice taijutsu today. Anko grated out, glaring at the boy who was almost pouting. But why? Naruto demanded, stopping suddenly. First, Anko hissed, stopping as well, a kunai slipping quietly into the palm of her hand. Because I said we were. Turning, she fired it off, forcing the blonde to jump aside to avoid getting run through. Second off, because if that ninja had been any damn good, he would have KU 3 seconds into that fight. No way. I kicked his A, he couldn't even slow me down. Naruto shouted defiantly, crossing his arms. Anko, however, solved his moment of deafness with a carefully aimed kunai, then when he dodged that she was in front of him, the blade of another pressed tightly against his T. Seeing the panic in his eyes, she bore down on him with all of her impressive intimidation. You will practice taijutsu, you will not complain, and you will go to that hospital for the examination. Bu, Naruto to protest only to fall silent as the blade pressed even firmer against his T. Do not make me KU, Anko hissed, eyes narrowing. I'm running out of places to hide the B. When Naruto nodded, Anko smiled faintly while slipping the kunai into a pocket. She was actually sort of pleased with the boy's growth so far. He wasn't heartless, probably never would be, but he was strong and he could take a life. Most importantly, he was learning how to hide his darker feelings. He had almost perfected that smile and act of foolery to the point that Anko, if she didn't have her connection to him, would never be able to tell if felt anything or not. He was becoming the perfect teammate in Anko's opinion, or at least her perfect teammate. Still, if she didn't get some time away from Naruto, she was going to either K him or S the first person with blonde hair that she saw. Thus the reason why she had told him about the examination, though he still didn't really understand why he had to go. Seeing the dubious look on his face, Anko sighed, trying the only thing that ever seemed to work with Naruto when he was being stubborn. Listen, I know you don't want to have that exam, but it's the best thing for all involved. Every time you go on a mission you could pick up a disease. Seeing his eyes widening, Anko grinned sadistically. Of course you could be like that one genin I knew. Came back with a strange skin rash that quickly dissolved his entire body. Well, I guess if it's important. Naruto said, eyes wide, obviously warming to the idea. Anko nodded mentally, rubbing her hand together. Yep. Now remember, we have taijutsu training too, so you had better get your in gear and head to the hospital. Met me at around noon in the usual spot. Right, Naruto said, before he was up and running away from her. Stretching, Anko stood, chuckling. Life was good. A bounce found its way into her step. She was feeling as if she had finally got the hang of this sensei crap, and Naruto was nothing like most other children. Which meant the Hokage would get to keep his balls. For now. Laughing at that image, she entered the tower, bypassing several disturbed-looking office workers and made a beeline for the mission hall. Her mood considerably better now that Naruto was no longer around to pester her. She started to consider how best to tease Iruka. Sadly, she was denied such fun when she entered the mission hall and found Nara Shikaku behind the mission desk. Damn. Well, there went most of her fun. Still, when life gives you lemons. Much to Anko's surprise, the man, like Iruka, didn't even look up at her entrance. It wasn't until she had reached the table he was seated at and leaned a hip against it that he moved. Shihaku let his eyes give her body a quick glance, then forced down the appreciative smile that had appeared on his face. Where you been? Anko tapped a finger against her cheek, then smiled sweetly. Finding out what sort of moves my new teammate has. Seeing his surprise at her double entry, she leaned forward slightly. You want to show me your moves? Aye. Shikaku coughed, easing back slightly. I don't think, that is, see. Hey. Anko interrupted him, popping her end before reaching into her jacket to produce a tightly bound scroll. Mission report. It was completed successfully. The Nara man said, relaxing as he started shuffling through papers. Well, that's good. The Hokage told me that he wanted to see you immediately after you got back. What's that old bastard want? Anko muttered before shrugging. Well, if that's it, I'm gonna go get some real sake before I see that old coot and kick Naruto's A. Right, Shikaku said, letting his eyes drift below her neckline. Seconds later he had diverted his attention, due to the fact that a kunai had appeared from nowhere in Anko's hand and was now spinning around her index finger. Laughing at how easy he was to intimidate, she turned away, strutting back toward the doors as they opened to allow a haggard-looking kunai to enter. Boys sure are energetic, aren't they? Anko purred, purpose a bit too suggestively, seeing the horror on the other woman's face. Wah! Kurenai whirled around, only to have the door S in her face. Chuckling to herself, Anko strode down the hallway, debating about which bar to visit before seeing to Naruto's training, then paused, remembering that the Hokage wanted to see her. That was unusual to say the least. Maybe he wanted to hear her report firsthand. Nah, it wasn't that important. Of course he could have another mission for them already, now that was a possibility. Putting off her sake for the moment, Anko altered directions slightly and made her way to the spiraling staircase that would lead to the Hokage office. Reaching the landing quickly, Anko hesitated, glancing around, wondering at the lack of security. Normally she could feel various anbu, even if it was faint, but now there was nothing. Shrugging it off, she walked along the hallway and then, without knocking, opened the door to the Hokage's office. She was one of the few people in the world, the others being the Sannin and Kakashi, that could get away with such an act. Idly she wondered if Naruto would ever get to this point of casualness with the most powerful ninja in the village. Seeing the old man looking at her intently, Anko gave a two-fingered salute before crossing the room to flop into her usual seat. So what's up? Got a new mission for me and my brat, or you just want a cheap thrill from seeing me? That was when Anko noted the displeasure on the older man's face. Displeasure was bad. Had she finally crossed some invisible line? Actually, I had wanted to hear a brief rundown on your mission, Sandaime said after a moment before picking his pipe up to light it. However, I now think for your sake that we should discuss the main reason for wanting to see you. Anko managed articulately. As I said a little over a month ago, Naruto's graduation was somewhat atypical and he was not accounted for when the genin teams were originally put together. The Sandaime paused as if thinking and then nodded, blowing a smoke ring. Incorporating him into one of the existing teams then would be difficult. However, something has happened that is beneficial for all involved. Quote. What are you getting at? Anko asked, slowly sitting forward, a vague thought taking shape in her mind. A current genin has recently injured himself and been forced into retirement. This has created a shortage for his team, which, as you know, for genin is a three-man cell. Naruto, as the only available genin that is not already in a three-man cell, is therefore being transferred. What? Anko shouted, standing up as if the seat had bit her. Naruto is my student. For the duration until the completion of the Chunin exams. The Sandaime continued calmly. All this requires is that you allow him to work with another team. He does need to learn how to work with others after all, especially if he wishes to be Hokage someday. I refuse, Anko said harshly. I'm not letting some half-rate, B-heart take Naruto and totally screw up everything I've accomplished with him. Anko-chan, it's not like you won't be training him or taking him out on the occasional mission. He just needs to experience working in a full team. Quote. Naruto is the only person in this whole damn village that doesn't care that I had a deranged sociopath as a sensei. Anko said evenly, eyes growing cold. I trained him. He's my student, my soldier. You can't exp. I thought he was a Konoha ninja. Sandaime said, see her off sharply. Anko, I assure you that this is for the best. Quote. That B Kurenai finally got you to bend over and take it, didn't she? Anko said scathingly, eyes narrowing. It's all her damn idea. Naruto is mine. I'm not going to let some prick that you and that stuck-up pain in the B selected just take him away. Sandaim's face suddenly turned serious, his eyes hardening. Suddenly he was filled with an air of total authority as he stood, intimidating Anko into taking a half step back. Mitarashi Anko. That is enough. I am Hokage of this village. I am the one who decides who teaches whom. I am the one that decides who goes into battle and who does not. Breathing heavily he sat back down, his voice still commanding. Naruto is now a member of Team 9. He will meet his new team tonight at 8 in Training Area 9. He will be fit for duty. Do I make myself clear? As glass, Anko muttered, turning to storm out of the office. Anko, he needs to be on a 3-man team for the Chunin exams. I would prefer he had some experience with them before then. No need to explain, Anko said coldly, turning as she opened the door. I understand, you can't risk the heartless M creating a heartless M bastard. Then before the Hokage could say another word, she stalked out of the office, the door behind her. Naruto stared absently at the floor between his feet, wondering about the lime green medical gown. He glanced once more at a tray of medical instruments hidden beneath a white cloth, both wanting to know and not wanting to know what they were. He was not even sure why he was still here. Oh well, at least he had gotten this far. The last time he was in the hospital, Naruto had not even been allowed past the emergency room doors. Eyeing the clock with mounting impatience, Naruto finally decided that he was not going to wait around for some damn doctor and hopped off the table. Grumbling, the blonde walked to the cabinet where the nurse had put his clothes, only to discover that it was locked. Damn it, Naruto shouted, grabbing the handle and yanking hard, trying desperately to open the doors. Hello Uzumaki-san, I'm. A new voice started, only to trail off as the door to the room clicked open. What are you doing? Oh. He. Naruto managed, turning slowly to stare at the slightly grayed-haired man dressed in a white doctor's coat. I'm trying to get my clothes. Ah, well please have a seat, the doctor said, and Naruto quickly retreated to the medical examination bed, trying to put the man at ease. He was not stupid, he could remember the last doctor's visit from when he was 5. Now then, Uzumaki-san, I am Dr. Kiyoshi, the man said, offering a brief smile. Hi. Kiyoshi blinked, staring at him closely. Strange, why would the Hokage ask me? Waving a hand, the doctor brushed him off, moving over to the counter, working a minor summoning before with a poof, a folder appeared. Frowning, he picked up the thin object, checked the name on the cover, then flipped it open, reading the single page contained within. Uzumaki-san, when was the last time you received a checkup? I've never had one, Naruto answered, his tone betraying his confusion. Well, we do have one entry for you. According to your file, you came in several years ago complaining about a scraped cheek to the on-duty Dr. Kabira-san. Kiyoshi turned, glancing at Naruto as if seeking confirmation. Like hell, Naruto said forcefully, indignation in his voice. I was pelted with rocks and that bastard doctor chased me out. He what? Kiyoshi responded, eyes darkening. Chased me out, Naruto shouted. I see, Kyoshi muttered, making a note in the file. Too bad for him, he's up for promotion this week. Done. He pulled a rolling chair up and sat down. Now then, I guess I'll do a complete physical examination. What exactly is a complete physical? Oh, Kyoshi said, looking up from his scribbling in the folder. Just normal stuff like checking your reflexes, tolerance to certain allergens and medicines, susceptibility to healing jutsus, B tests, and well, a dray. What? A dray? A digital rectal exam? It's to check your prostate. Kyoshi smiled reassuringly. I assure you it's quite normal for ninja returning from missions, so nothing to get upset over. Rectal. Naruto muttered, eyes wide, and then suddenly he darted off the table and grabbed the locked door, trying to yank it open. Behind him, he heard the snap of a plastic glove and froze. I suppose if you're going to act like that, I better do the dray first. Nuip. Ino sighed, rubbing her temples, staring blankly at the empty classroom. 3 days of waiting around was getting boring. Every morning her team, i.e. Shino, would gather in this classroom and await their Jonin sensei here to hear how their wounded comrade Yamabe Anzai was doing. It was funny, but until Anzai had been wounded, Ino couldn't stand the boy. She had even commented to a friend once that it would have been no skin off her nose if the boy's Anzai was fine as long as you were not around him for more than a few minutes. If you actually knew him, he could make Naruto that foul-mouthed, ill-mannered runt who had too much energy and never shut up from the academy, looked like Sasuke. So it was really strange that ever since Anazi had gotten hurt it wasn't even clear how she had felt guilty for ever thinking that. Kami. Shino had been the one to suggest waiting in the classroom. He was bothered by how cold the hospital was and the way Ino kept fussing. Shino was not big on fussing or on being powerless to help a teammate, which Ino had learned over the course of the time they spent together on the same team. Didn't mean she liked him. Shino was an okay guy, but he let bugs live inside him. That was definitely not a pleasant thought. Still, he was good. He actually handled most of the missions that involved planning. If only he wouldn't talk to the bugs. Ugh, why couldn't she have Sasuke on her team? Sasuke was handsome, brave, heralded as a genius, plus he belonged to a famous clan. Ooh. You just know that whoever could win his heart would have you loyalty from him. Shaking her head and adjusting her ponytail out of habit, Ino promised that for the chance to win the boy's heart she would have gladly even taken on Anazai as her other teammate. Why did that big forehead, pink-haired bimbo, Sakura get her Sasuke? How was that even fair? Sighing, Ino forced herself to stop thinking about the two, which was a monumental feat, and accepted her fate for now. She'd still win Sasuke, it would just take a tad more effort. Lost in her daydream, she completely failed to register the sound of the door opening or the coughing of her sensei until he was inside and Shino greeted the man. Hey, it's sensei, what Anzai's condition? Don't worry, he's fine. The sword-toting Jonin said, before covering his mouth to cough. Eyes drooping a bit more, he stared at the two before sighing. I should probably tell you what happened exactly. Yay, that'd be nice. Ino's staring at the chronically sick man. We've been waiting 3 days for that. I was sparring Anzai and he tried a jutsu he wasn't ready for. Hey, it said, coughing once more. He's also decided to quit as a ninja. He says that he was never warned of the danger in being a ninja. That's B. Ino shouted, her guilt suddenly gone. That moron hurts himself and then claims he was never warned about being a ninja. Kami, he went through the academy with us. Even that Naruto understood how dangerous it was. Good point. Hayate conceded, edging back slightly. It is his decision, Shino said calmly, looking in Ino's direction before he shifted his gaze to Hayate. What of our team? We will be one man short. Hayate coughed then nodded. I've taken care of that. It won't be permanent, but I've arranged for a fill-in for Anzai. He'll meet us later today at our usual training area. Ino blinked then scowled in thought. Who was their new teammate? Well, it was obviously male and a temporary situation. It couldn't be. She prayed that she was right though. Oh sweet Kami, let it be him. She'd show that pink-haired bimbo now. That's it. Meet up at the regular training area at 8. Coughing, Hayate finished. Ino crossed her fingers, prayed that it would be Sasuke and wondered what to wear. Hey, Konohamaru, what did you think of Iruka-sensei's lesson today? Udon asked, sniffling as he was prone to do. Konohamaru shrugged, kicking idly at a pebble. He really didn't know why he was hanging out with Udon or Moge, other than the fact that they had needed him to stop some of the other students from making fun of them. They were sort of friends, but indirectly they were using him because of his grandfather. Like everyone else, but they were nice enough and they made it a point of never mentioning his famous relative. I thought it was wonderful. Moge piped up, glancing at Konohamaru in that way. It took all of his willpower to keep from running away. The girl was downright scary when she looked at him like that. As if he was a piece of steak and she was just asked to eat him or something. Well, I thought so too. Udon said quickly, making it painfully obvious to Konohamaru that Udon liked Moge. The girl turned, a smile on her face, talking with the other boy distracted for the moment. Konohamaru took this as his chance to fall back and allow him to pull away from him. It wasn't so much because of the conversation, it wasn't because he was tired of them, but ever since Ebisu had stopped tutoring him something about professional courtesy, Konohamaru had begun to get antsy. He wanted real training, not what that guy at the academy was teaching. That was why he let them continue on without him, because he had realized what had been bothering him and how much he had no way of getting it. There wasn't a single ninja in this whole village that would train him now, he was sure of that. Even Asuma wouldn't train him. Glancing at a scroll shop, he eyed a display that proclaimed a scroll to self-teach kinjutsu. What if he knew one of those? He could beat his grandfather then for sure, but then he noticed the age and rank notice, meaning he had no chance of getting that scroll. Ugh. I hate being a kid, don't you, Moge? Konohamaru paused, realizing that he was alone and looked around. Oh yay, he had let them go on without him, damn. Oh well, this meant at the very least he could go bug someone to show him something. Maybe he would look for that Naruto his grandfather had told Asuma about once. Well, it would give him something to do at least, but other than knowing the boy wore orange and was only a few years older than him, Konohamaru didn't hold out much hope of actually finding the blonde. Hey, Naruto, get back here. Someone suddenly shouted from a stall down the street, and Konohamaru turned just as an orange figure darted out of the shop. He. Put it on my tab, old man. Acting on instinct, Konohamaru darted in the boy's way, forcing the blonde to skid to a halt and stare at him in confusion and annoyance. Oi, are you blind? Of course not, Konohamaru shouted back, lifting his head to stare at the blonde for a moment. I want you to train me. Ha, Naruto blinked, scratching the back of his head. Train me, Konohamaru said, daring the boy to refuse. Naruto blinked as if he wasn't sure what to make of him. I'm not going to train you. Train, Konohamaru started to shout before he was see off by the blonde's fist into the top of his head. Stupid brat. Train me or I'll tell. Konohamaru stopped, then glared up at the boy, rubbing at his head. If he used his grandfather's name, then he would be using his family and would get no reciprocity, but he would still get trained. Tell who ya runt. My grandpa, the Hokage. Konohamaru muttered, looking as disgusted as he felt for having to use that ploy. So you're related to that ol' billy goat man? Naruto said, blinking before turning to walk away. Well, I'm still not training you. Konohamaru blinked, taken back by that boy's refusal to train him and the way he had referred to his grandpa. Nobody had ever done that, or talked that way about the Hokage before. Suddenly Konohamaru's childish desire to try and provoke this boy into training him became a fanatic's desire. I'm not just going to stop asking. I ain't gonna train ya, Naruto called back over his shoulder without even slowing down. Konohamaru growled and then followed after him, shouting for the boy to train him. Yamanaka Ino was bored out of her mind. Her parents, in their infinite wisdom that she still couldn't understand, had come to the brilliant decision that since Ino had nothing to do for the day, that she could watch the flower shop for the morning. Ino was not a morning person, and such a suggestion was tantamount to telling her she would be forced onto a team with Naruto. No way in hell that could have happened. She actually couldn't decide which would be worse, having Naruto as a teammate or having to put up with Sakura, the big four-headed bimbo, rubbing the fact that her team was already doing C-ranked missions. Ooh. Ino wanted to too. She wasn't sure what she wanted to do, but violence was indeed involved in some way. All it would probably take is for Sakura to stroll into Ino's flower shop and say, "Oh, still no real missions, Ino pig." That's okay, and Ino would snap. Grumbling, she propped her chin on her hand and glared daggers at the door to her shop. She knew one thing for sure: by the time they had the next team training session, she was going to have a lot of pent-up hostility. Not that she could really do much against Shino or Hayate. Shino was always indifferent about that. Not that had he said much to her, Shino, while he did care for his team, was not a talkative person. Unless bugs were involved, then you couldn't shut him up. On average, however, he hardly said more than a sentence and rarely used words over 2 syllables. At least he had fashion sense. That grey high-collared jacket worked for him. Hayate was just B. Ino had seen him use his sword once. She had never seen a blade move that fast. It was almost enough to make her want to learn Kenjutsu. A jingle later, she was snapped out of her thoughts and found herself staring at a pink-haired, green-eyed girl. Sakura looked entirely too smug for Ino's tastes. Still, Ino had a job to do. Welcome to Yamanaka Flowers. Hey, Ino pig. Ino felt her eye start twitching. Hello, big forehead girl. Sakura's own eye started twitching, and Ino took a vindictive pleasure in that. Are you here to admit that Sasuke-kun is mine? As if. Sakura sniffed, crossing her arms. My mom has an order. Ino bit off her response and quickly shuffled through the small stack of orders, before selecting the order in question. Ino studied it for a moment, then nodded, moving around the counter to start gathering the required flowers. Sakura just nodded, thankfully being as quiet as possible while Ino worked. That was one thing that Ino gave her former friend Sakura credit for. Sakura appreciated the fine art of flower arrangement almost as much as Ino did. Sadly, the instant Ino finished and the business was taken care of, they were both back to verbally fighting. It only ended when Sakura left, tossing one last insult over her shoulder, and Ino was left enraged enough to throw a vase at the door. Damned pink-haired Sasuke stealer. Staring at the shattered pieces of the vase, Ino seethed, then grabbed a broom, knuckles white as she stomped around the counter. Could this day get any worse? Okay, let's see what you got, Naruto said, holding a thumb up as if signaling good luck. Konohamaru held a fist in front him, his voice louder than even Naruto's. You'll see what I have right now. That shouted, he went charging across the clearing at full steam, plotting to nail the boy with a right cross, and then his world exploded into a universe of pain. Seconds later he landed on the ground heavily, something foul filling his mouth. Sitting up he spat, staring in wide-eyed horror at the red glob that escaped him. He was B. Panicking, he stared at the boy, who was looking equally surprised, which infuriated Konohamaru, who jumped to his feet. What the hell are you doing? Trying to K me? Naruto blinked then shrugged. Don't charge in head on, or I will K you. Konohamaru blinked then raised his hands in an X shape. Are you crazy? I'm not going to do that. Oi. But I agreed to train you, so you should do what I say, right? Can't you teach me a jutsu or something? Konohamaru asked, glaring at the blonde intently. No. Naruto shrugged, scratching the side of his head. You know, now that I think about, why don't you just ask your grandpa for some help? Who cares about my grandfather? Konohamaru shouted angrily, bristling. I don't need him or his help. Well, I think you do. Naruto shrugged. Something inside Konohamaru demanded he attack, demanded that he make Naruto see him. Ebisu, Iruka, Asuma, they had all taught him mostly because of his grandfather, and all of those lessons came into play at this moment. What shuriken he had was suddenly whistling through the air, thrown only as a child could, and Konohamaru was traveling in their wake, preparing to attack with a jumping cross. That was when he found a new teacher. The blonde dodged the first shuriken Konohamaru had thrown, bent at the waist to avoid two more, then came around and drove a punch into his stomach. Gasping in pain and the lack of air, Konohamaru hung there for a split second, and then his arm was wrenched around and he into the ground. Seconds later his wrist felt as if it was about to snap, and a cold metal blade came into contact with his tea. Konohamaru, through his pain and tears, felt his bladder let go as he stared into those eyes, convinced of how close death was. Naruto remained stationary for several more minutes, and then slowly his face paled and he stood shakily backing away, as if he couldn't believe what he had just done. Konohamaru remained where he was at, tears of pain and urine his trademark that he was alive. Naruto started to say, bare pausing, the horrified look on his face shifting to a mask of confidence. You'll have to get hurt and you'll have to be, you can't rely on your grandpa or anyone else, that's the only way to get stronger. Always remember that, Konohamaru, and never give up. That said, the blonde turned and took off, getting as far from him as possible in the minutes it took Konohamaru to recover. It was several more before he could get to his feet, and when he did, Konohamaru just stood there. He stared after the blonde, taking his words to heart while trying to replay how exactly that last encounter had happened. Then, heedless of his wet clothes or the pain he was still feeling, he tried to imitate what his new sensei had done to him as best he could. Naruto darted and weaved through the crowd, eyeing the sun, dejected but hiding it. Seeing the street getting even more crowded, he cursed and, using his training, preformed a rebounding leap onto the rooftops to continue his run before dropping back to the ground. Seconds later he came bursting out of the bushes into the familiar training grounds, skidding to a halt as he spotted Anko on top one of the posts. Her gaze shifted from the trees to him, and then she looked away, her voice odd. Quote, ... You're actually here on time. That's a good thing, right? Naruto said slowly, moving closer, his instincts on edge. At any moment he fully expected a surprise attack. Seeing none in the immediate future, the blonde slowly sat on the ground, staring up at his sensei, who continued to ignore him for the moment. Several minutes of silence passed, and then Anko spoke. How do you feel now, about that ninja UK? Suddenly her eyes snapped to his face, gaze unreadable. I'm not sure, sometimes it's like, I still can't accept it. Most of the time I don't think about him, and when I do I realize. Naruto stopped looking down, the realization that he'd had while fighting the kid from earlier flashing through his mind. I realize I'll always have to K, that it's a part of who I am now, even if I don't want to. Anko nodded, then took a sip from a bottle of sake that Naruto hadn't noticed until now. The woman in question, however, acted as if nothing was out of the ordinary. Quote. How close was it? Huh. Naruto blinked, feeling uneasy. Could she know just how close he had come to K that kid earlier? No, that was impossible. Anko shook her head, waving a hand as if dismissing her question while taking another gulp of sake. Forget it. Are you drunk? Naruto asked, squinting up at her. No. Anko paused. Not yet, at least. She gave him a pleasant smile, which sent a chill down his back. By the way, I've got an order for you from the Hokage. Order. HN. You need to be in one piece for team training at 8 in training area 9. Anko explained, her voice almost growling. A team's lost a member and you've been assigned as a part-time fill-in. What? I thought you were. Naruto started to protest until Anko see him off. Save your breath. I've already argued with the Hokage. From what I gather, you'll have 2 teams and we'll just rotate you. Anko explained, scowling before looking at her sake bottle and muttering, I still say this is that B Kurenai's doing. Naruto, am I a bad person? Anko suddenly asked, her voice sounding odd once more. Naruto sat there a moment, scowling, then shook his head and crossed his arms. Well, you're mean, you like trying to K me. Nodding, he stared at her defiantly. Quote. I don't think you're bad, just psycho. Anko suddenly stared at him intently. I want to explain something to you before. I've done things that people in this village hate me for. Things they should hate me for. Like what? Naruto asked, blinking in confusion. He honestly couldn't think of anything she could have done to make everyone hate her. Then again, as Naruto knew from experience, this village really didn't need much to hate someone. I K my own teammates once. Anko suddenly admitted. What? Naruto shouted, jumping to his feet to stare at her in horror. She had. That's. Do you know what it's like to love someone so intensely that you'd do anything for them? To care so deeply that you'd follow any order? Anko asked coldly, see him off. No. Naruto felt the chill on his spine increasing. I'm not surprised. Anko said, her eyes flickering away from him for a moment before looking back at him. Naruto, I did a lot of things for Oro-sensei, things that I shouldn't I have. I knew they were wrong, I knew that he was doing things he shouldn't, but I didn't tell for a long time. I let him do things that I shouldn't have. Naruto just stared in silence, wondering what she was talking about why he suddenly felt betrayed, why he wanted to shout and rave. Still, however, he didn't feel the hate that the villagers had to feel for her, but then that was probably due to him being unable to make others suffer. Still, he didn't understand. The villagers don't care that he lied to me, that he made me love him, that he fooled a gullible teenager. Anko said, darkly staring at him. Only that I helped him and that I'm still here and that he's not. They hate me because they don't understand what it's like to be an outcast, how lonely that is and how willing you are to let yourself be fooled by the one that acknowledges you. Naruto stared at her, his thoughts suddenly racing a million different directions. At first he wanted to rant and rave and shout that it didn't matter her reasons, she should have known better than believe that. Yet he was reminded of Mizuki and of how willing he had been to believe the man, of how lonely being an outcast was, of how much he wanted to prove himself to anyone that would acknowledge him. That's why that B Kurenai got the Hokage to take you away, she thinks I'm going to become like my teacher. Anko said hatefully. I'm nothing like him. Nothing. Anko. The dark-haired Jonin, however, fixed him with an angry glare. What? Do you hate me too, just like all those other narrow-minded bigots? I'm not surprised, how the hell could you understand? Are you sorry about what you did? Naruto said, see her tirade off. Anko froze, her gaze intense, and Naruto seriously began to wonder if she might not have decided to K him. Then he saw the way her face changed, how her eyes that had shown anger and hate changed into something else. Why do you think I'm still here? Anko finally said, her voice edged with remorse. I try to show them. I try to make it up. They won't forgive me, nobody, not even the Hokage. He just sees me as an experienced ninja and Konoha needs as many as it can get. Why won't they forgive me? Anko asked, her voice almost growing too soft to be heard. Why? I'm sorry. I don't understand why they won't forgive me. Naruto stared at her intently, watching as her head lowered and her voice grew softer. Obviously she was drunker than she had led him to believe, but that didn't change what she was saying. He could feel his anger building toward the villagers. It was an anger born from them hurting someone that he had grown close to. Anko was the first person after Iruka to really acknowledge him, the first person that seemed to care about him, and the villagers were treating her like trash. I forgive you, Naruto suddenly said, his voice firm. I mean, if you're sorry then that's it. That's how it's supposed to work, right? You make a mistake and you apologize, you try to make it up, at least that's what Iruka-sensei always told me. Anko looked up at him, her face blank, then a small smile appeared. Maybe you're not useless after all, runt. Hey, Naruto shouted, only to frown as a thought occurred to him. Oi, who's my new team? I don't know, Anko muttered, waving a hand dismissively. Don't really care, but until then you better practice those kunai tricks I showed you on the way back from Kusa. Right, Naruto said, smiling faintly. Anko shook her head and hopped off the post, wobbling slightly when she landed. Meanwhile, I'm going to go torment a Cyclops. Anko grinned, waving a familiar book. Have fun, Anko chirped as she walked past him and then stopped, turning to glance at him. Damn it, why couldn't you be a few years older? I could use a nice guy like you. Then laughing at herself, Anko disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto stared after her blankly, then shook his head, turning toward the post while slipping a kunai out of his holster. Anko really didn't make any sense when she was drunk. She was already using him. What did a few years matter? Ino would have smiled, really she would have. After all, being freed from working in a family flower shop was grounds for smiling. Sadly, in Ino's opinion, she had been freed only to suffer an even worse fate, meeting her new teammate. She was still praying it was Sasuke. Actually, Ino would gladly take anyone as her teammate as long as it wasn't her ex-best friend. Why did Anzai have to even quit? He should have learned from his damn mistake and not been so reckless next time. Not that Ino could really say anything. Compared to almost everyone else in her year, she was completely pathetic. Her one skill was the family jutsu. It was not designed for combat, nor was Ino very good at using it. She had tried to pick up a jutsu from Hayate, but the man said he didn't know any outside of the basics that didn't involve a sword. She toyed once more with the concept of taking up kenjutsu. It would give her something, but she'd have a small amount of surprise walking around with a sword strapped to her back. Maybe if the sword was smaller and less obvious. Ino mused for a moment, then put those thoughts to the side for another time. She was running late and broke into a light jog, working her way through the streets of the market before taking a left and entering the forest. Taking the almost hidden path, she bent saplings out of her way, slipping through the bushes, cursing Hayate for picking this type of location for training. Didn't that man understand this ruined clothes? Ino was going to have to buy a new outfit after this, not that she would really complain. Stepping into the clearing, she found the 3 training logs, with Hayate casually standing beside one with Shino seated at the base of another, finger extended and speaking with a bug. Good, she wasn't late. That would have been embarrassing to say the least. Imagine what Sasuke would have thought had he been here and she'd been late. That was when a sound reminiscent of a stampede reverberated through the still forest air, followed shortly by Ino tumbling to the ground, tangled in an orange, blue and blonde blur, who was yelling that he wasn't late, that he had been training and all sorts of other crazy things. Attempting to untangle herself from the boy, she registered that it was Naruto, and unfortunately while he was shouting in Ino's ear, he was attempting to get back to his feet, complicating her own efforts. To make matters even worse, at some point in their attempt to get up and separate, his hands ended up places they had no business being, as did her own. Convinced that both had been his plan, she suddenly bolted upright, shrugging him off, and began beating him black and blue while shouting, "Pervert," at the top of her lungs. When she finally finished, Ino dusted her hands off, huffed and turned on her heel. Right, Hayate said, fatigue obvious in his voice. I guess I don't have to introduce our newest teammate. Ino froze, her eyes widening in disbelief at what Hayate had just said registered with her. Had she committed some horrible sin in a past life? Or desecrated a shrine without knowing? Please let this all be one horrible sick joke. There was a moment of silence, and then several things happened at once. Ino and Naruto pointed at each other and started shouting at the same time. Why do I have this annoying bee on my team? Why do I have this annoying prick on my team? This was followed by both freezing and turning to glare at each other. "Who are you calling annoying?" they shouted at the same time once more. This led to both allowing an eye to twitch before they lunged at each other. 20 seconds later, a deeply distraught Hayate and Shino was looking at two grumbling and battered blonde ninja. Ino glared at Hayate and then at Naruto and then back at him. How could things have degenerated into this? Of course, Sakura had to have a hand in this or something. Hell, until this moment she had thought Naruto was a villager now. Ino stopped scowling. Now that she thought about it, Naruto being here didn't make any sense. Turning, she started to ask her sensei about that, only to have the Jonin answer her unasked question. Uzumaki-san has been apprenticing to Anko-senpai and has already completed a B rank mission. What? Ino managed, glancing at the boy once more in disbelief. Naruto in response stuck his tongue out at her and then started laughing. Naruto had done a B rank mission. Naruto. That Naruto. Impossible. Not even Sasuke-kun had done one of those yet. Ino, if you can stop giving our new teammate that look, I'll explain our upcoming mission. Hayate said, then completely unaffected by her scowl, started explaining the mission he had been hinting at for the last week or so. The mission is B ranked, at the customer village's request. Why would they wish to increase the rating? Shino asked, and Ino was pleased to see the idiot in orange jolt in surprise. Not that she could blame Naruto, Shino rarely spoke and he was so quiet in the first place it was hard to remember he was even there. As I said, the village initiated that its rank be raised. Most likely the headman and elders are just anxious to have it completed. So really, this will be a C rank mission with B ranked pay. Hayate shrugged before coughing into his hand. As for the mission itself, it is very straightforward and rather simple for a C ranked mission. Oi. What exactly is the mission? More enemy ninja or do we have to K monsters? Naruto asked, looking excited. Actually it's much more mundane. Hayate replied blandly. There has been a rash of unexplained K in a remote area of Fire Country, so our mission is to first find and stop those responsible and then second rescue all of those K that we can. Shouldn't we let someone else handle it then? Ino asked, not liking the sound of this. She glanced at Shino, seeking some sort of support, but the boy merely raised an eyebrow. Hayate on the other hand just coughed and continued as if none of them had said anything. We leave tomorrow morning at 10. We are traveling to the village of Nigariki, which is geographically isolated by ravines and mountains. But, why us? Ino almost demanded. I mean, don't you think this is a bit more than we can handle? Hayate blinked looking at her. You shouldn't have any problems. These are most likely only bandits. Besides, Kurenai-san's team has already completed a mission of this level. It was you, Ino-san, that demanded a C-rank mission, so please kindly keep that in mind. But, Ino stammered, uneasy with how he shot that at her. She had really only demanded it because of Sakura. Ino had no delusions that she could really perform such a mission. Now, however, it seemed that she had no choice. Unless she could think of something, which was when she remembered the obvious. We've never worked as a team with Naruto. Idiot. Naruto interjected, and Ino rounded on the boy, ready to lash into him, unprepared for when he lashed into her. The best teamwork develops in battle. Besides, you can't always rely on it. Like Anko says, the Yondaime didn't K the QB with anyone's help. Quote. Ino fell silent, staring at the boy, then snorting glared at her passive sensei and the ever-silent Shino before storming off. Stupid, idiotic, the only thing that could sum up her thoughts and feelings on the matter was one word. Men. Staring at the boy across from him, Hayate couldn't help but feel put off. He had never met a ninja that wore orange, nor had such bright yellow hair. Now his personality, it reminded him strongly of a former superior within Anbu named Anko. He was loud, unctuous and just a tad why. Yet Hayate also had a feeling that despite all of that, he was a capable ninja like his sensei. Which was why he wanted to see Naruto's skill alone, because if he was really like Anko, then once the fight started he would lose track of everybody around him. Oi. So you really want me to come at ya, with everything? Naruto asked cautiously, no, almost as if he was afraid. Yeah, something like that. Hayate coughed, slipping into a casual stance. Just come at me however you go after Anko-senpai. Seconds later he realized what he was facing. It was a mere split second, but in that moment Hayat saw a gaze reminiscent of Anko. It was in it that Hayat began plotting the various angles of attack that Naruto would be following, when much to his disbelief Naruto charged straight at him. Talk about an idiot. The Jonin didn't even bother to pay attention to how Naruto was moving. It was obvious the boy hadn't learned anything from Anko. So he casually reached out for a simple left jab aimed at the boy's chin, which was when he realized his mistake. 1 minute Naruto had been a sitting duck, the next he was inside Hayat's defenses. It was literally only due to his faster reaction time that he managed to move out of range while staring warily at the frustrated genin. How could he have been so stupid? Of course, if Naruto had been trained by Anko, he would be using the heavy style. So distracted with cursing his stupidity, Hayat just barely had time to register the roundhouse kick that was sailing at his stomach. Still, he was a Jonin and former Anbu, so he managed to avoid the kick only to receive a hook punch to his kidney. Wincing, the man lashed out with a hammer fist to the boy's jaw, sending the boy tumbling away from him. Sadly, Naruto recovered quickly and with a smirk that would do Anko proud came charging back in, kunai coming into play as projectiles. Hayat dodged them expertly, almost frightened to see that he even threw like Anko, but was brought up short when he realized that Naruto had used those weapons as a distraction. Because now the blonde was within range once more and was moving for a round kick, which changed into a sidekick when Hayat shifted to avoid the blow. Realizing his only recourse would be to put some distance between them, Hayat leaped backward, a trickle of sweat make its way down the side of his face. Damn, was it him or was the boy getting faster? He was given further reason to sweat when Naruto quickly preformed an all-too-familiar hand seal and shouted his move. Cage Bunshin. Oh, that wasn't good. Landing, Hayat quickly sought the hilt of his sword, amazed that Anko would teach a genin that move. His amazement turned into almost horror at what happened next. Apparently the 4 clones felt this was not enough and moved to create even more. That was not the version of Cage Bunshin that all Jonin used, that was. Hayat felt his fingers slacken slightly as he realized what he was facing. Normal Cage Bunshins could not make copies, the only version that could was the one that Kakashi-senpai used, which was a deviation that the Yondaime had created. So for Naruto to be able to preform that version, this was a whole different game. Get him. Hayat got a hold of himself, pulling his sword as the small mob charged at him. Thank the Kami he had the good sense to fight the boy in private, this was quickly getting out of hand. Seconds later he was deflecting kunai, blocking punches and kicks, all the while trying to figure out how to handle this situation. Then suddenly the fighting slacked off and he froze, eyes darting to 5 Narutos that were moving into position even as the others backed off. It didn't take a genius to realize what was about to happen, and with a quick Shunshin no Jutsu he espied the coming blast at the last second. Perching on an overhead branch, he panted, studying the various surviving clones intently and almost shocked at the brutality that Jutsu had behind it. That move had nothing but an intent to K behind it. He knew of very few ninja that would go for that type of attack, and none were genin. Naruto was baring his fangs. Was this how he sparred Anko? Hayat frowned, then coughed, watching as Naruto gathered the remaining clones and seemed to hold a discussion with them. This was not a good sign. A genin with a forbidden level Cage Bunshin, the style of one of the most ruthless ninja ever, and a viciousness unheard of in a genin. Geez, how much more could this boy do? Apparently a lot, as all the clones suddenly turned and launched a hail of kunai at him. Okay, it was time to stop playing around. He needed to put this boy on the defensive. Narrowing his eyes, Hayat gathered his chakra, channeled it into his sword and then s it out. Dance of the Midnight Tornado. There was a moment of nothing, and then the chakra in the sword was sent flashing into the air, creating a small tornado which deflected the kunai back toward the orange ninja. Pushing off the tree with a burst of chakra, he followed in their wake, pleased to see he had caught him off guard. Landing the Jonin, making sure to use the dull side of his blade, lashed out to being dispelling the various clones. Bastard! The remaining Narutos shouted before they all came charging as one. That made things easier, and before long he was standing completely alone in the clearing, which made him pause. Naruto was missing completely. Well, not really. Hayat could vaguely feel his presence. That was highly unusual, in all honesty. Even if Naruto was hiding in the shrubs or trees, Hayat should have a clearer feeling than this. It wasn't until he felt the air behind him ripple from a kunai that he figured out the problem. Reacting quickly, he twisted around, just barely dodging the attack, and then he preformed several more near impossible evasions and swore. What was Anko thinking teaching that jutsu to a genin? Okay, Hayate was aphically worried. Everything about Naruto was beginning to scream danger, which meant he had to end this now. For all he knew, Naruto could have created more damn clones, had them use the Maiseigaku, and were preparing to S him with kunai. Twirling his blade, he pointed the tip down, channeling chakra into the sword once more. Seconds later, he drove the blade into the ground, allowing the chakra to burst outwards, the ground to pieces as it spread. Dance of the Moon Dragon crash. He was rewarded with more than 10 Narutos appearing out of thin air before disappearing in puffs of smoke to leave only a dazed and confused blonde. Without hesitating, he pulled his sword free and shifted his weight, already preparing for his next attack, even as Naruto recovered and began an unfamiliar jutsu. Which meant this next moment was crucial. Dance of the Midnight Tornado. Ha! Naruto shouted in mid-seal, eyes wide before he was knocked over and battered along the ground as Hayate's attack S into him. Hayate didn't even wait for the blonde to come to a complete stop as he channeled the rest of his chakra into his legs of a powerful jump into the air. His sword arched overhead and came to a crashing stop as he landed in a kneeling posture over the blonde, the dull edge of his sword pressing painfully against Naruto's shoulder. The boy remained perfectly still, only moving when Hayate started coughing and returned his sword to its sheath. Seeing the dark look on the boy's face, he coughed and sought something to say, and thus potentially keep this child from seeking him out for retribution. That was a very impressive match. Naruto stared at him through squinted eyes for several moments before putting his hands behind his head. He. I'll be Hokage, no doubt. Hayate blinked, then coughed once more. After that fight, he had no problem seeing the boy getting strong enough for that job. I'll see you tomorrow at 10. Right, Naruto shouted, jumping to his feet, nodding as he started for the village. First I'll have some ramen, then I'll train, then I'll. Hayate watched and listened until the boy was long gone. Looking around at the training area, he frowned, then glanced in the direction that Naruto had just went. That fight, nobody would have expected that from a genin without any family. Naruto used his jutsu frighteningly well, he didn't rely on him, which was a flaw a lot of ninja had, and most importantly, Naruto thought ahead at times. After all, how else could he have known to use the Maiseigaku when he had? The blonde had thought ahead, knowing that Hayate would either dodge or reflect the attack, and he had came up with the right tactic for that situation. That was something most people would expect from a Hyuga or Uchiha, not from a clanless ninja. Well, we have tactics covered now, Hayate said before coughing. Now if he could just keep from pissing of Ino, they'll be fine. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.